Welcome to a walkthrough of our latest updates to the TapClicks dashboards. With the April release, we've now released a brand new set of big number widgets, and I'd like to walk you through how to configure those. So we're going to jump into a quick dashboard. And you'll notice that these are big numbers. So we've previously always had the wrap in circle. We've had some styling options around the data that's shown. But what I'd like to do is kind of introduce you to some of our new styling options that are available. So first of all, these are going to be found under the styles area when you edit a widget. When we come down here, you'll notice that this is a plot type classic. That's a new field that we've added. And we now have several other options in here. So the classic plot type is the traditional one that we've had in the platform forever. The default is the brand new one with some of the new styling options. So when we switch this widget to default, you'll notice that it looks pretty much the same as it did. There are some slight font differences, which is one of the reasons we retained the classic plot type. So if somebody does need to create one that matches. However, I think you'll see that there's a lot of new options that come with the default widget. So first couple of things, we can control the wrap. So the wrap you've always been able to kind of turn on or off. But now once we turn it on, we see a lot of these other options. So first I can wrap the circle in a circle or a square. So if I prefer, let me just save this real quick, and then I'm going to resize that widget because I want to play with it. Okay, so now, so what you can see is I now have a square where that metric was. If I wanted to, I could also put on a separate one. And you see that they will show side by side. Okay, so now once we've got that, we've now wrapped it in a square. We also have some new options around the font styling. So we can actually make the font italic or bold it if we want to make it a little bit more prominent. We can also control the font color on an override basis. So if we want to make that, purple, maybe my theme is going to be completely different, or I might just want to override it and make it, a dark color. So this gives you really a lot of creative freedom to be able to control how the font is going to be displayed on the big numbers that you're creating. The other new option is the background color. So we can now control the bubble or square background color with three options. We can actually use the data source, which was the default before, which matches up to the data source settings value for this data source. We can use the theme, which is the dashboard theme that is on the color palette that's used for all of the graphs. You can use that as your background color, or you can customize it and create and just pick your own color that you want for the background. So now you really have a lot of creative freedom there. The other one note about this is all of the metrics in this particular widget will have that color. So we don't specify it for individual widgets, but we do have it on all of the widgets on that, or all of the blocks on that widget. We also now introduced some new styling options around the background, so we can keep it solid like we've done traditionally, but we now can also introduce a linear or radial gradient. So when we select either linear or radial, we now have the option of being able to pick from other colors to be able to create that gradient. And if we do a linear one, or we can do a radial one, depending on what kind of style is appropriate for your actual dashboard design. We can also now control the border color. There's a border color around these, and the border width. So if I specify the border width, I can actually pick a color and use that color to sort of accentuate a specific widget or a specific set of metrics. So that border width can also be used. And then for our square widget, we can also control the rounding of the corners. So you can make a widget that looks, has rounded corners and, matches up to the way that you typically present information. The last couple of settings really are around being able to kind of control the sizing of the widget, both from a font perspective as well as a wrap size. There is some interaction between these to try and keep it looking good, but you definitely have much more granular control than we did in the previous version of the widgets. So hope you enjoy working with that widget and updating all of your, updating the dashboards. We do have professional services available if you need some help with that. So our team's ready to jump in if you need. Okay, there's a couple of other enhancements here that I want to highlight around that plot type area. So now we've got the default plot type. We also now have a multi-metric comparison and a sparkline. So I'll start with the sparkline. The first thing is the sparkline is going to show a time frame based line chart, like sort of mini line chart under the widget. So when we create one of these, as soon as you select the plot type, we can now go back over to the data section and we have an option for the sparkline. So we can select 3 months, 6 months, or year to date. And that will just control the display of the overall sparkline and the trending that's considered. Okay. As a best practice, we would recommend that you probably title that widget with something indicating the time frame, because obviously with this visualization, it's kind of difficult to see what that time frame is over the long haul. Okay, the next one is our comparison widget. So this widget is a brand new version of the widget that allows you to actually innately compare data. So we obviously have the compare across the entire dashboard, which is wonderful, but sometimes you just want a comparison on one, and you don't want to either override the time frame or make the client or the user, click the compare button. So in that case, this widget is a new option for you. It includes, this is actually one piece of data, so this is all impressions. It's going to show you last month, the month before, difference, and then a comparison with an upper green arrow. And you can notice, just like in the sparkline, we now have an option in the data section for the comparison, and you can do month over month, quarter over quarter, or year over year. And the year over year is this year versus last year. So it knows kind of where we are in the year and is comparing you kind of period over period. Okay, so that's the comparison. Now, one last note in the current release, we also added a new feature, which is the ability to control the directionality of the up or down arrow in your comparisons. So that's a separate feature. It actually applies to all of the widgets, not just the big number. But I did want to highlight it here because it's also reflected on the comparison. So in this example, I might say that impressions going up is a bad thing. So something like a position or a click. A cost per click going up might actually be considered negative. So now you can come into the gear for the individual metric and flip the comparison whichever way is appropriate for the green display. Okay, so. And that's available on all of the kinds of widgets. So it is also available on grids and our traditional big number. Okay, the last plot type that I'd like to talk about is our multi-metric. So this is, again, a very similar, let me drop my wrap size on my font so that you guys you'll be able to see it. Okay, so what this does is this actually will let you put multiple metrics on a single widget. So if I wanted to put client CPM, so what it's doing is it's actually using the first metric in this list as the highlight, and then it's showing the other 3 metrics below that. This widget does scale up to 5 metrics in the bottom, so you can select what other kind of metrics, up to 5 that you need, and it will ignore any metric beyond that. This widget also does have the same sorts of styling options, so we can control the gradient. You can do the same things with the gradient and the borders, as well as customizing the fonts. So all of the same styling options as before. And that concludes what we have for the April release. I hope you guys really like it. And please give us feedback via our customer portal or our customer support organization. And happy widget building. Thank you and have a great day.